G'day, guys. Welcome to the review of our 17-point loss to Melbourne at the MCG on Friday night. And what is there to say? It was a shocking game of football. But Friday night, start of winter, lots of dew on the ground. Would that game been any different if it was under the roof at Marvel Stadium? Maybe a little bit quicker. Maybe the skills may have been a bit cleaner. We did see a pretty good game there last night between the Bulldogs and Geelong, which was a ripping contest. Definitely the conditions would have played a part in that game. There's no doubt about that. And I think the takeaways from a game perspective is that Melbourne, they're not at the top of their game at the moment, whatever that looks like. There's no doubt in my mind they certainly miss Clayton Oliver. I mean, if you stack up all the players that are out of our team at the moment, I think Clayton Oliver is, he'd clean all of those up. He is a fabulous player who just makes that team so much better. So I think from that perspective, we were pretty lucky that he was out of that team. There's no doubt they had an advantage in the ruck, although TDK did perform okay. They were always going to get on top of us in that aspect, particularly with Gawn and his ability to go forward and clunk a few grabs here and there and what he does around the ground. But, same old story. Just same old story. That our inability, even though we are dreadfully out of form, whatever that form may look like, and we continue to question methods and systems, just our inability to scrap out a game, regardless of the opposition, and backs against the wall. You would have thought that a team club that is saying that they are united and are in this together, and all the pressure which has come our way, particularly pre this Melbourne game, that there wasn't a hell of a lot of vigour or a hell of a lot of fight to just somehow make it happen. And this week it wasn't about supposed missed opportunities in front of goal. That was generally the consensus last week against Sydney, that it was the fact that we weren't able to convert from the set shot, and that was predominantly the reason why we lost that game. Well, that was what we were told. This week, that wasn't an excuse. In fact, Melbourne probably, they were the ones that probably left a few out on the ground. And that margin of 17 points was maybe flattering, but it felt really comfortable, that 17-point loss. And what I mean by comfortable, we just didn't get close, and it always just felt like Melbourne, they just had our measure for the whole night. And although we may have showed some endeavour and heart, and the attitude may have been good, just the basic fundamentals of the game were once again missing, and particularly on Friday night, it was the missed tackles, and you would have thought that, given the importance of the game and the occasion, that would have been something which would have been a focus during the week. And I think that's the most disappointing thing, because we know what we look like in regards to just moving the ball and that synergy in our front half going inside forward 50. We know that's been something which has been consistent for the whole year. But even Michael Voss being happy with the defensive aspects of the game, Yeah, I just couldn't really see that either. Although we did keep them to a relatively low score. And a team that can kick goals, maybe, I'm not quite sure, but I just felt the physicality wasn't there. Fight, the real fight. And what does this team want to stand for in tough times? Yeah, it just leaves you really scratching your head that they can't find something to get a win. And when it really mattered, Melbourne were just able to, find an avenue to goal. And, decent sides are able to do that, and we're anything but a decent side. And I don't want to say at the moment. I know Voss mentioned at the moment in his press conference. I'll get to a little bit of his wording in a minute, but how long do we say at the moment for? Because this has been something which has really been going on for far too long. So the questions remain. They just remain. And the unknown now moving forward and what that looks like. And even just sort of thinking ahead, with our game against Essendon, arch rivals coming up shortly, I don't even think a win will really answer all the questions we have about this football side at the moment. It's just about now consistency, I suppose, consistency of wins and being able to string wins together against good opposition. But it does make it a fascinating game, that one next week, against a team that's knocking on the door of playing finals football. And it seems like they've got their act together, although, there's a long way to go for them as well. So no doubt in my mind that just listening to, and I reckon to be honest, I reckon he's holding up okay, Michael Voss, which sort of says to me that maybe he's just been guaranteed his third year. So he's, buying time, which I don't like. I really don't like that. Maybe we're all after a bit of blood here with the way we're feeling about our football club and football team and how, I suppose, unacceptable this is. But I just think some of the messaging in his press conference on Friday night was around his frustration, although he didn't come out and throw the players under the bus. There was a slight shift, I think, on Friday night, because that was such a big game and almost like that was the last chance. And he did say, well, this year's finals window is fast closing. Well, I think it's closed. There's no doubt it's closed. And he's using the terminology brutal. These are brutal facts. We're not good enough. That's the brutal facts. And I know he's saying we, but he did touch on that when the game needed to be taken on, that the players played safe football. And maybe they're not his instructions. And they're not doing what he wants and what the coaching staff wants. Are they capable of doing that? Is the messaging good enough? Has it been set up? Has there been too much of a shift away to defence and now the players are confused? I'm not quite sure. I don't have enough expertise or knowledge around that. But there's no doubt we are not good enough. And he said that. And he says that we have to accept that we are not good enough, or parts of the game we are not good enough. And he said we play some really good opposition. No, well, you've played good opposition, but you can't. This game requires you to be able to put your system and methods and game styles up against the best. You can't be playing second-rate teams every second week, and we were supposed to be coming this year. So I don't think that's good enough, that messaging. And he keeps saying that's the feedback we've got. Well, you've got the feedback from the opposition. Yeah. Well, I think the feedback is well and truly based on you, mate. Okay? I think the feedback is what the players are giving you, not necessarily who we are playing. Anyway, that's enough of Michael Voss. I still think, unless it goes absolutely pear-shaped, and this is pear-shaped, but I mean absolutely pear-shaped, and we cop some floggings along the way towards the end of the year, that maybe the club will make a decision on Michael Voss, but I don't think so. But the concerns for me are, even if we do show some improvement in the back half of the season, is that enough? Is that enough, and is that really acceptable considering how important this year was? And we're no longer just talking about, I suppose, composure and losing those games at the end of last year, being pipped on the line, and maybe just a little bit more experience in big moments. We're not talking about that anymore. We're actually talking about, I mean, he's saying we are close, like we've been close in games, but I don't think we have. I just don't feel like we have. And all the margins are comfortable margins, which suggest we're a fair bit off. We're a fair bit off, even, just not so much the elite teams, but just we're just off. We're off by a considerable margin. Anyway, and he did say, every week I've walked in here and thought it's going to transfer. Is that delusional? It hasn't quite gone to plan, but every week we've been in the fight. Well, I think being in the fight is one thing. I mean, these are professional footballers. They're getting paid to, I suppose, have a good attitude and bring their best, whatever that looks like. So you would expect us to be competitive at least. It's surely got to be more about that than just being pretty close on the scoreboard. I don't think anyone sat there on Friday night watching that game that it felt like we were close. And it doesn't feel like at all it's going to turn. And yeah, if he's thinking based on what he's seeing and the brutal facts, you use the word brutal, he thinks it's just going to click and transfer it the following week the way we're going at the moment, then that's pretty delusional from my point of view, because it looks far from turning. I suppose my concern is a lack of real fight. And the so-called improvement in leadership, because I'm just not seeing that either. And yeah, what was he brought to the club for? It was to really build that side of it. So what I'm going to do, which I haven't done for a while, is just going to go through the performances of the players individually. yeah, they just seem to be so down on confidence. No, I mean so down on confidence. Let's go with Blake Acres, who started the season off really well, but he's deteriorated really, really quickly. I know he had that bit of an injury, but wouldn't be using that as an excuse. But his ball use is as bad as anyone in the game at the moment. He had 18 touches, and while you see guys like Lockie Hunter and Ed Langdon, who's not a great user of the ball, but he genuinely makes pretty good decisions, safe decisions, and you look at the mistakes that Blake Acres is making at the moment, and he did kick a lovely goal. It was a lovely goal. It's a worry, because that's been a worry and that's been a knock on his game since he started at St Kilda, then went to Fremantle. So it's not something which is new. Obviously brought to the club to play on a wing where we've had problems. I think up until maybe a month ago, his form was pretty bloody good. But it has drastically fallen away. So much so that given his inability to hit targets and make good decisions by foot, and now starting to fumble a little bit as well, that if we were a little bit stronger, he'd be finding himself playing in the VFL for sure. Jordan Boyd, I actually thought Boyd and our other small defenders did a reasonable job on Melbourne's smalls, whether that was Cade Chandler, who I thought was pretty good. He got up the ground and was pretty dangerous when he got inside 450, and I think he kicked 3 or 4 behinds. He was off target. But I thought Jordan Boyd and Chincotta were okay, sort of rotating through, whether it was Spargo, and particularly Keziah Pickett, who I didn't think had a great game. So it's not a knock on Jordan Boyd that he's not winning a lot of the ball at the moment. And I think his weapons are his kicking, and he has missed a fair bit of football this year. So he's probably a little bit underdone, and I still don't know on him. He's still pretty, I suppose, raw at this level. And we're just not seeing enough from him offensively, particularly with his kicking. And we're just not seeing that enough. And when you're a small defender, if your only role is to lock down, I think you can only have one of those. You just need a lot more offensively from the likes of Jordan Boyd. 8 kicks, 1 handball is just not enough. But I thought defensively, I thought he was okay. It wasn't like Melbourne's smalls ripped us to shreds. I felt like he sort of stuck to his task okay. Adam Cerra, look, I think clearly he's been our most consistent player, and I thought he was our best again on Friday night. He battled away really hard. I think he was in the contest, 30 touches, 17 handballs, 13 kicks. It's going to be really interesting to see how he develops over the next couple of years and whether he will become a top grade midfielder. I think he's definitely on that level below. And does he have enough tricks in his bag to be really damaging? Or is he just going to be a sort of, just an accumulator who can win his own ball and be pretty consistent through 4 quarters, which he has been. I think he's been a shining light this year in a really disappointing year. But for me, what does it look like moving forward for Adam Cerra? I think he's leading the John Nichols medal. But I think it probably says more about how underwhelming our other mids have been. Because, we're just not getting the best out of some of the others. But he's taken up a lot of the slack, and I think that shows yeah, some good signs for him in regards to leadership. Chincotta, a little bit the same as Boyd. I think he was okay defensively, but yeah, just not winning enough of the ball. 10 disposals, 6 kicks, 4 handballs, just not enough. Looks okay when he gets it. He's just not getting it enough. It's one thing to lock down, but you've got to be able to hurt the opposition defensively, and we're just not getting enough of that from our sort of small and medium defenders. Cottrell, yeah, I was trying to work out what his actual role was. He had a moment or two where he provided a little bit of dash, but it was a step backwards after a promising performance last week against Sydney. He's another one that's missed a fair bit of footy over the pre-season. He's probably not at his best in regards to his running ability. He's got a funny running style. He's sort of hunched forward, a bit like a hyena. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of like him, but I don't know whether he's good enough. I would like him to be. You know, you want these younger guys to develop, but they're getting out of that stage of just being really raw. You know, they're getting some games under their belt. He signed a 2-year contract last year, so he'll be on the books again next year. Will he be one of those players that will just sort of fall away and become a VFL footballer and then off the AFL list? I mean, who knows? But I think Friday night was a pretty poor performance by Matthew Cottrell, just the one tackle from his 12 touches. Cripps is just, yeah, he's just not getting the job done. You know, I think he's probably busting his guts. And there's no doubt he'd be feeling the pressure. And, yeah, he's probably playing in that manner as well. I just think all the shit that he got during the week, I thought he was going to come out breathing fire and really breathing fire, but it didn't come. It didn't really come. I'm not saying that he wasn't trying or anything, but has he got that in him? I don't know. Has he really got that in him? Yeah, I mean, he's committed to the football club. We know that, and he keeps saying that. But it's been a pretty average year by Cripper so far, and he'd be pretty disappointed with that. Curnow probably got the hardest matchup with Stephen May, who's one of the best key defenders in the game. So it was a tough ask. Just kicked the one goal, but I mean, I think he provided. You know, took a few marks, got up the ground, but, yeah, I just didn't think he really got into the game. Yeah, tough matchup, Stephen May. And they do defend really strongly, Melbourne. They do set up really well with Lever. They're really disciplined and know what they're doing. So it was always going to be a tough ask for Charlie Curnow. It was going to be a tough ask whoever got Stephen May, particularly if they were going to use Lever as that intercept player. Doherty, probably similar to Cripper. You know, he's having reasonable numbers, but he's, you know, with all the issues he's had, he's just not the player he was. And I don't think he ever will be the player he was probably pre-knee. But he's still giving a little bit. 26 touches. He was probably in the best half a dozen players for us. But is he having an impact, whether that's across half back or when he goes into the midfield at the moment? You look at his numbers, but he's not damaging, only 363 metres gained from nearly 30 disposals. I don't think he's using the ball that well. But he's having a dip, but it's probably not good enough. Paddy Dow came on, got a little bit of time on the ground, showed a couple of little things here and there. There was a nice hit-up kick or a nice kick to space where we got an uncontested mark inside forward 50. He's just got to play next week, you would have thought. And hopefully that is on the ground. 9 touches. Yeah, I mean, did he make the most of those opportunities with a fair chunk of time on the ground when Stephen Silvani went off? Probably not. But, you know, it's about now giving him a little bit more time on the ground to see what he's got. But, yeah, it didn't look like he was out there and you think, geez, he's out there and he looks really determined to, stick it up the arse of Michael Voss. It just looked like, I suppose, the Paddy Dow that we've come to know. And that's, look, that's not a knock on him. It's just what it is. Yeah. Zach Fisher, I thought was poor, really poor. You picked 40 touches up. May have been playing a little bit different role in the VFL last week to get his 40 touches, but I hardly noticed him. I just hardly noticed him. Just the one tackle, he can't tackle, and he's having no impact at this level, just the 4 kicks. 4 kicks. It's not enough. It's not enough. Brody Kemp, I thought he was beaten defensively. Thought he got lost on a couple of occasions. Got body checked a couple of times. Is he a true defender? Not at this stage. He's not, but shit, he showed something in the air. Backed himself in the air. He's got a great set of hands. And he shows some real courage in the air as well. I really like that. Whether he is a defender, I'm not quite sure. Not quite sure whether he is your classic sort of defender who can really, because you've got to be able to do it. You've got to have that balance. Whether he can play on a hybrid, like a Fritsch, who I thought was really good for Melbourne, really good. And he didn't play on Fritsch all the time, but he was on him for a large majority of the time, and I thought he was nearly the difference in the game. But I liked a lot of things that Brody Kemp did, which is good for him, and potentially good for us as well. Good for him that he'll be guaranteed another game next week, and I'd probably like for him to stay in the team and see if he can develop into a strong defender. But I like the confidence, because it's not the first time since he's coming into this team that he's been confident in the air, and it's actually quite eye-catching. And we don't have a hell of a lot of eye-catching footballers. So maybe something to work with there. Matthew Kennedy's just having a poor year. Almost feels like he's in no man's land at the moment. 176 metres gained from 20 touches, not having any impact on the game at all. I just think he's having a poor year. Showed some great signs over the last couple of years that this one's been one to forget. Mitch McGovern, thought he was one of our best, Gov. And he's had some knockers with his, I suppose, intensity at times, but, maybe he got the easier matchup in their front half, but I didn't see him beaten one-on-one. Thought he used the ball really well by foot. I actually quite liked his game, which makes it quite interesting to see what the future holds for Mitch McGovern, considering he's out of contract at the end of the year. And he's got through the year. I mean, the year with so many question marks on him around his body, he's getting through it. He's getting through the year. Has he played every game? Or has he missed one? But he's looking like he might be on top of things physically. So that makes it, So if say, for example, Kemp develops, if Kemp keeps developing, what does the future lie for Mitch McGovern beyond 2023? I don't know. It's one to watch, though. Harry got the easy matchup. He had Tomlinson. Tomlinson's not a good defender. He's an okay defender, but he's not a good defender, particularly a key defender. And I think Harry, he was lucky he got that matchup. There was no Petty, who has been playing forward, but Petty usually takes to allow Jake Lever to play that intercept role. Petty usually takes the gorilla, and Harry is the gorilla. And yeah, look, he was in our best half a dozen, Harry. He kicked 3 goals, 2 or 3, whatever it was. Contested really hard, tackled okay, applied some pressure for a big fella, looked really focused. But overall, did we get enough? Did we get enough from both Charlie and Harry as a combo, considering how potent those two can be? Probably not. Motlop, been a bit disappointing. I know he's a second-year player, but I just feel like he's lost a bit of his zip. And we're not getting a lot from our smalls in our front half. And, yeah, I mean, there was a couple of moments that he pushed up the ground and got the ball in his hands. But, yeah, when you look at guys like Keziah Pickett and Hill from Collingwood, they've got some real toe. Real toe. And as Motlop got that real breakaway speed that's going to give him, I suppose, that point of difference. I'm not quite sure, but he's still very young. Yeah, I think he's one that will need to get moving next year. I think there's a window of 2 years for these small forwards where you can sort of go, okay, they're still young. You see some really explode in their second year. I think by their third year, and this is what probably concerns me a little bit about Corey Durden. I know he's out that. I thought this would be the year that he'd probably show a little bit more than he has. And hopefully this time next year we're talking about Motlop as a generally good quality small forward at this level. Because at the moment he's not. Lockie O'Brien, wow. Signed a 2-year contract last year to be at the football club, and what he dished up on Friday night was once again not AFL standard. He did have one nice kick inside 450 where he just leapt back on it and weighted the ball quite nicely to advantage, but he's just not doing enough. Fuck, he's slow. He's slow for a wingman. There's no acceleration, and there's no strength. He's a sort of nothing footballer. He's a nothing footballer, and we were torched by Hunter and Langdon on Friday night across the centre line. It's amazing, isn't it, that he showed a little bit last year at the start of the year, then dropped, came back, got dropped, came back, got dropped. I think he was dropped 3 times last year, but they still signed him a 2-year contract. And this year's been, there hasn't really, I think he may have had a little bit of a hamstring at one stage. I might be wrong there, but this has been a big step backwards for Lockie O'Brien. To get that opportunity on Friday night to show very little, no good. Matt he teases with those games where he can hit the scoreboard and make the most of his opportunities, but I think the last couple of weeks has just shown you that, I just don't know whether he's up to the level. You never say never with these blokes because you just don't know. You just don't know whether it's system-based. You just don't know whether other coaches could get better out of them with a better. I just don't know, but he just doesn't look good enough. He just doesn't look good enough. He never looks dangerous. Never. Speaking about players that have gradually, not so much gone backwards, but the form has just tapered off. And whether the opposition are putting a lot of work into him because they know he's really our only genuine outlet in regards to offence, So from defence, when we are trying to move the ball, and that's Adam Saad. I mean, 14 touches. I don't necessarily want to talk about his defensive side of the game because we know he can do that quite well, but we're just not getting anything out of him. Nothing at all. Now, is that him? I don't know, but it's like it's been a guy that was All Australian last year is now, he's just like hardly. I'm not saying he's hardly sighted, but he's just not the player he can be. It just shows you going through this. Just shows you how many guys are either down on confidence or just not being able to find something to lift. And is this coach of ours getting the best out of them? Can it be this bad for this long? It's not like we've had a really unhealthy list throughout the. I mean, I've got some injuries now, but there's supposedly still quality there. Jack Silvagni, yeah, I mean, I was sort of thinking about Jack. And I don't think we had many options not to bring him back in because obviously Pitnick had that hand injury. But you could, as I said in the preview, you could have somehow made it work with the Lewis Young. But I actually thought when he went down, I was thinking about it, I saw an image of him clutching at his groin hip region. He looked in quite a bit of pain, and we didn't see him for the rest of the game. I'm hoping that's not a serious injury for Jack. But I was thinking if this time of the year, you start to see guys, out for the rest of the year, they're going for surgery. That'd have been the last game. If it is a lot more serious than what we think, maybe it's just a 3 or 4 weeker or 2 weeker, 1 week or whatever it may be. It may even play next week, but we'll soon find out. But I was thinking, is that the last game Jack Silvagni played for the football club against the D's on a Friday night at the MCG? Don't know. Walsh is just battling, just getting caught, and no spatial awareness at times as well. And he just doesn't look the Sam Walsh with his energy, and he's probably busting his guts, but he just doesn't. And when you're down on form, and he's not our worst player, but he just hasn't got the running power. He's lost a bit of toe. Yeah, I just thought it was a poor game. I know he had 22 touches. Probably, he's probably tried his heart out, but it's at the moment it's a bit of a fall for grace from Sam. But like a few, he had that serious back issue, so it's no doubt impacted him. With his conditioning and with his form. Wiedering, not bad. Not bad. I thought Van Ruin showed him a clean pair of heels at stages. Really like Van Ruin. He's pretty bloody exciting. And Wiedering, he played quite well against Sydney last week. 16 touches, 8 marks. Couple of intercept grabs. He was solid. And Lewis Young, not at the moment. Just not at the moment. He's another one that's just fallen away. And I mean really fallen away this year. They shifted him forward in the last quarter. Yeah, they shifted him forward. That didn't come to much, but didn't mind the move. Try something a little bit different because he's not giving a hell of a lot in regards to his intercept possessions and his ability to defend. And Is his kicking that great that you want the ball in his hands? Probably not. So, yeah, well, there you go, guys. That's it's a pretty doom and gloom look at our players on Friday night. And we just wait again. We wait to see what happens over the coming weeks for our football club. I will be really interested to listen to the messaging of the club during the week, and I'll speak soon in regards to our game against the Bombers. See you soon.